Hi everyone, I'm Matt from Looking to Bitcoin, and today we're going to be looking at the key levels you need to be watching for Bitcoin to either bounce off, find some support, or maybe the resistance we need to keep an eye on. To do this, we'll be using a number of resources that are all freely available on lookintobitcoin.com, your number one source for Bitcoin information. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to ensure you're receiving all of our content as soon as it's released. So right now we're just on the 200 weekly moving average heat map chart here on lookintobitcoin.com, and this has been a pretty prominent chart that we've paid a lot of attention to over the past few months. If we just zoom in a little bit here, we can see Bitcoin spent a fairly long period of time consolidating and even dipping quite far beneath this 200 weekly moving average before we finally broke above, potentially kicked off the new bull market. But we are actually yet to come down and retest this. If we actually look at all the previous market cycles of Bitcoin, as we moved from the transitionary period from bear cycle into bull cycle, we always had multiple iterations of Bitcoin coming back down, finding buy support on this 200 weekly moving average, which we are yet to do. So potentially that's one line we need to actually pay attention to as an upcoming key level for Bitcoin if we are to retrace any further. Secondly, if we look at the golden ratio multiplier, another one we've been paying a lot of attention to recently. This is made up of a few components, but we'll just focus for now on this orange line, which is the 350-day moving average, almost 1 year. And this actually usually indicates the kick off of a new bull cycle. Once we actually dip beneath this, it usually indicates a bear cycle like we did here in the tail end of 2021. And about a year later, a very painful year later, we finally crossed back above this orange line, which usually signifies, as we said, a new bull market is commencing. There may be some transitionary period with some sideways price action like we usually do see, but again, another line to potentially watch. And of course, these levels are above, which are multiples of this 350-day using the Fibonacci sequence. If you'd like a little bit more clarification on exactly how this is calculated, you can come to the chart beneath here and actually go through all of the Fibonacci sequence and the multiples involved in that. We'll also take into account the realized price, a very prominent and important metric in the Bitcoin space. This is taking into account the average transactional value of each coin on the network, aggregating that, dividing it by the circulating supply, and we get the realized price, which many will refer to as the fair value of Bitcoin by taking into account the average probably purchasing price or sale price of each Bitcoin on the network. And as we can see, if we just zoom in here, we usually at the tail end of each bear cycle spend a little bit of time beneath this realized price before bouncing back up, and similar to the 350-day moving average, once we cross back above, it usually signifies that we have ended the bear cycle and maybe we can have a little bit of upside finally. So we crossed this just a couple months ago, and as we can see, we are fairly significantly above this now, but it's something that we also need to consider, because if we do have a more sustained retracement, then this is definitely a key level to be keeping an eye on. So if we just go onto the Bitcoin chart here on TradingView, we can see a little bit more in depth the actual key levels and how they would look on a Bitcoin chart. So if you are looking into Bitcoin subscriber, you'll have access to all of these private TradingView scripts. So I'll just apply a couple now that we've discussed the 200 weekly moving average. And as we can see, this is currently sitting at around $26,000. So as we've retraced a little bit from the highs we made a few weeks ago, just above $30,000, we could potentially come down and retest this. Like we said, in every transitionary period from bear cycle into bull cycle, we always come down and test this line, find some buy support before rebounding even higher. We are yet to do that. Of course, there is the potential that we don't even touch that line, but it's just something we need to be aware of. And the golden ratio multiplier, so I'll add this back in, and we can see this 350-day average is currently sitting at just above $22,000. So if we were to retrace even lower, even temporarily, then maybe we'd find some buy support here. But we could also look to something more technically based, such as support and resistance levels on the chart. Key levels that traders and investors look out for when to potentially scale into their positions or start taking profit. And what we can see is something like here, where Bitcoin found support previously, came back beneath this, retested it, turned into resistance where lots of people came in to sell Bitcoin. Then we had this long drawn out tail end of the bear cycle before we came up again, retested this, retraced following it, which really solidifies the fact that this is a key level to be watching. So this sits at probably around $25,000, not too far from this $26,000 200 weekly moving average. So if we are to retrace, then there's probably a fair amount of interest for people accumulating Bitcoin at those prices. What we can also do is look to the places where we may find some resistance above. So I've just added onto the chart here this $30,000 resistance level, which of course is a very key level that a lot of people will be looking at for Bitcoin to break above. If we just zoom out a little bit, we can see this was a very significant level throughout the previous bull cycle. After we had our first major retracement, it was to the $30,000 level before we rallied to new all-time highs. And again, after retracing, we again found support on this $30,000 level before again new all-time highs. And as we've come down in this bear cycle, we've actually rebounded off the lows fairly substantially, nearly 100% from the lows we set late last year. And if we just zoom in, we can see we have actually tried to break through this $30,000 level, but a lot of traders and investors may want to take profit at these points, maybe even open short positions betting on Bitcoin price going down. And we can see we've been very close to breaking through it a number of times, but this is definitely a key level to watch, as many traders will be watching this as either confirmation if we break above that we are definitely kicked off the new bull cycle, or if we continue to fail to break through this, that maybe we are going to see a little bit more of a deeper retracement. But if we zoom out above that, we can also see levels such as this 1.6 multiple, this green line here, of the 350-day moving average, which is currently sitting at around $35,000, which again actually lines up pretty nicely if we just put a line on there with some fairly notable price actions such as the support we found back here. So that's definitely a significant line to watch. And again, above that, we see this line at around $44,000, which if we just add on this line here, we can see once more actually turns out to be a pretty significant level from a technically price action based point of view as well. So I'd say above 30,000, we're really need to keep an eye on these levels, 35,000 and 44,000. Obviously a fair bit higher than where we are now, but we need to keep our hopes up that this bull market will really kick into gear at some point. But like we discussed with the realized price, that currently sits at just above $20,000, which actually lines up very nicely with our previous all-time high in 2017, which was around 19,800. So if we just zoom in a little bit, we can see that they're very close together in their current prices. And after we had a little bit of a retracement, after price rejected off this 200 weekly moving average, after we found some resistance, we came back, and as soon as we reached these two key levels, the realized price and the previous all-time high, we had this huge run to the upside as so many people saw that as an opportunity to buy more, accumulate at considerable discount compared to the prices we had just a few days before that. So I would say those are definitely key levels to watch if in a potential worst case scenario we break beneath the 200 weekly moving average, beneath the 350-day moving average. I'd definitely look at this as a very strong level of support. But once we've broken through potentially 30,000, 40,000, 35,000, $44,000, and of course the previous all-time high, which sits at just beneath $70,000. What could we maybe expect a potential price peak for in the next all-time high for Bitcoin? Well, if we look at the price forecast tools, there's actually one metric which has predicted very accurately the topping price in each of Bitcoin's bull cycles, and this is the terminal price. I won't go too much into the calculations behind this metric as it's fairly complex, but if you just go on to look into Bitcoin, scroll down, you'll see all the calculations behind that. And on our YouTube channel, we've done an explainer video previously about the price forecast tools, which I definitely recommend checking out. But this is actually currently predicting Bitcoin to peak at around 114, 115 potentially $1,000, which I definitely wouldn't complain at. What we also have to acknowledge is in every one of Bitcoin's transitionary periods moving from a bear cycle to a bull cycle, this terminal price has actually remained fairly constant, sort of what it has done for the previous few months, and actually only begins to rise exponentially to the upside in the tail end of a bull cycle as price catches up and crosses in each of the previous cycle peaks. So what really, as this starts to increase, as Bitcoin starts potentially catching up to this terminal price, we might see convergence, and when they cross, this is usually a good indication. But like we said, this has a lot of room to go to the upside once it takes into account the later stages of a Bitcoin bull cycle. So really, $115,000, $114,000 may actually be a worst case scenario for a Bitcoin price peak in the next bull cycle. So just to summarize, Bitcoin is currently struggling to break through the key level and psychological resistance of $30,000. It might sound simple, but a lot of traders and investors really do look to these round figures for where they actually buy and sell their investments. $30,000, $20,000, $40,000, all very key levels in Bitcoin. And as we break through $30,000, it'll probably signify to a lot of people that we have more room to grow to the upside. However, beneath that, our nearest support is the 200 weekly moving average, which is currently at around $26,000, and will likely also have strong buy pressure at around $25,000, which has been a very key technical level throughout the bear market. And we can also see if we were to break even lower than that, then the previous all-time high and key level of $20,000 also aligns with the current realized price, which would signify a very strong level of support where potentially a lot of traders and investors would accumulate at a significant discount. And above $30,000, we can look to the key golden ratio levels that reside at $35,000 and $44,000. We also, as we discussed, could see $40,000 likely being a significant area of interest due to it just being a fairly psychological level round number and the technical factors we discussed before. And also looking at the price forecast tools, we could say that the current cycle top prediction may be around $115,000, but this is likely to increase. So hopefully even higher prices. If you like this video, then please visit lookintobitcoin.com, where you can also consider becoming a site subscriber to gain access to live chats, in-depth newsletters, indicator alerts, private TradingView scripts, and more for a fraction of the standard industry price. And let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below and on social media. What levels are you watching for Bitcoin, and at what point would you maybe accumulate more or start taking some profits? I look forward to reading and replying to all of them. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.